Spiritual knowledge is far superior to scientific knowledge as it leads us to the truth. If it were true that man evolved from apes, Christ would have said to St. Paisios, "I created you from an ape to humble you." God did not do this. If we assume that God accidentally chose only 2 chimpanzees, apes, or hominids out of hundreds of thousands and gave them an immortal soul in His image and likeness, then we would implicitly consider God extremely unjust. He would be a tyrant if He denied hundreds of thousands of hominids, except 2, the sublime gift of deification, theosis, which would not be consistent with His love. After all, animals have no freedom to choose. God created man as a new being, not one produced from an animal, even if he used the same matter, earth, and the same principles of creation and design. A special act was required for this. Even if God used the same principles, man is fundamentally different. Through man, God manifests Himself in the world in a special way, by means of the intensity of His grace, which animals do not have, and particularly by His incarnation. This is the most important thing. God had to create man as a new being for this reason, as animals are unable to attain human reason. And when I say reason, it mysteriously applies to the body as well. In addition, the garments of skin, that is, an animal body, which far from God, were given to our ancestors after they had fallen into sin through disobedience. Before the fall, people had bodies similar to those of the angels, to quote Saints Gregory of Nyssa, Maximus the Confessor, and John of Damascus. In other words, the human body was once spiritual and immortal, but after the fall it became biological, animal, corruptible, and mortal. The scriptures and the holyfathers, who were personally enlightened by God and had knowledge far superior to science, said this. Spiritual science has been shown to be superior to modern science in many cases, which focuses on the immanent. There are many cases of errors in science, both intentional and unintentional, because mortal man is not immune from mistakes. However, in divine revelation, there are no errors. You should know that the saints were enlightened by God, and even if they might not have comprehensive knowledge of problems unrelated to salvation, scientific or other problems, then divine providence enlightened them in problems related to human salvation, and the Church recognized them as reliable. This is because the Church is concerned with the salvation of man, and the problem of human origins is strictly related to human salvation. I personally know of 2 cases in the Church today that I still cannot define. In the first instance, a person had problems with the devil because he had unknowingly agreed with so-called Christian evolutionism, which accepts the possibility of man's evolution from animals. In the second instance, a monk who had previously had the gift of unceasing prayer could no longer pray, because he had the thought, well, what if evolutionism is true? The thought of species evolving from one to another caused him to freeze in a state of demonic stupor, and prayer stopped in his heart. He was unable to do anything with himself until he chased away the thought. In fact, brethren, holy Mount Athos and all the saints, both modern and ancient, have opposed evolutionism, including the theistic version that acknowledges divine intervention in creation. That is, they are against evolution from one species to another. Some confessors of the faith languished in communist prisons for this, and the communists were unable to refute their position. Of course, they were tortured, but that's another subject. One of these was a very famous theologian who at a public meeting, after lengthy calculations by communists who tried to prove that man evolved from apes, was asked in an insulting and derogatory manner, "Well, what do you say now, comrade?" The theologian replied calmly, saying something along the lines of, "Those who believe that their mother is an ape have an ape as their mother, and those who believe that their father is God have God as their father. And since we are talking about theology, I don't know if you are aware that there is a canon from a very important council, the Council of Carthage, which states, Whosoever says that Adam, the first man, was created mortal, so that whether he had sinned or not, he would have died in body, that is, he would have gone forth of the body, not because his sin merited this, but by natural necessity, let him be anathema. No one, brethren, wants to go against the holy canons and the experience of the holy fathers, just to say that we, as the eternal image of God, evolved from generations of mortal hominids. Because evolutionism presupposes death. The mortal body presupposes death. Man was surely immortal before the fall. The arguments of science are generally the deductions of learned men, based on what we observe today. They themselves say that these are theories. Sometimes they have no serious theories at all, only experiments. These are mysteries. Even for believers, much of this world is a mystery. The risen Christ is most important, as only He can lead us out of the horror of loneliness and insecurity, and the chaotic monotony of meaninglessness. He is the truth. The truth is a person, and absolutely compatible, capable of interpenetration, of full perihoresis, for which man craves and which is in fact a paradise state. The truth of interpenetration, global atom and human perihoresis must be explained as it is essential for finding the truth. There is a clear difference between us and animals. Unlike the rest of creation, which was created by command, at the creation of man all the persons of the Holy Trinity held counsel and took part in the creation of man when God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Genesis 1 verse 26. You see that the plural is used in relation to God, whereas the singular is used in relation to man. Let us make man, singular, in our image, plural. The Holy Scripture continues to use the same disagreement between the singular and the plural, stating, "So, God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. Male and female created He them." Genesis 1 verse 27. This disagreement, which may seem strange at first glance, is actually very accurate. Why? What do we know about God? We know that God is one in three persons. These persons are so closely connected to each other that they make one God. This is called perihoresis in theology, the indwelling relationship of the persons. There is no image in the material world that would precisely describe this spiritual reality. However, it is possible to imagine three beams of light interpenetrating each other, forming one new beam. There are three of them, and yet it is one. You can imagine three sounds produced by three different musical instruments. There are three of them, but the music is one. Since one God in three persons created man in His own image and likeness, it means that God created a single man in His image and likeness, consisting of many personalities of two sexes, male and female. This means that God did not create 8 billion people currently living on earth. God created one giant mind in His image, in which all these personalities will be interpenetrable so that they may know each other's thoughts, share experiences with one another, and all of them, each preserving its uniqueness, may work together as one common mind to attain a single common goal, which is theosis, the eternal perfection of the person. You can imagine how this synergy takes place by looking at how the parts of the body work together, consciously and in full natural coordination. You can see that I am now talking, breathing, keeping my balance, and all of this is in natural coordination. All parts of my body are cooperating for one purpose, to try to speak to you and help you with God's help. Thus, when the Holy Apostle Paul spoke several times about the church as a body with many different parts, of which Christ is the head, it was not a metaphor or a figure of speech. He spoke about a tangible reality. Unfortunately, we no longer live in this reality today, as we are separated by sin. As a result of the catastrophe of sin, one Adam fell and split into composite personalities. The one mirror of one God fell and was shattered into smithereens. This is the fall of Adam.